Greetings, welcome to Lunarburn Studios. My name is Eric Stevenson, and today we're going to talk about chasing a wax pattern. So as we get started with our goal of chasing this wax pattern, has a couple different areas that we want to approach. We have a skirt across the bottom that needs to be trimmed off, we have a seam line across the top of the skull, and we have a variety of positive and negative issues, wax anomalies from the casting process, that we're going to want to clean up before moving forward. One of the things we want to remember as we're chasing the wax is that everything in the wax will ultimately translate to the metal. Fingerprints, every little nuance in texture, surface quality, and so we want to be mindful of those things as we're moving forward. So one of the first things we want to do with this wax is that you can see where we actually have a skirt kind of around the base of the wax, and this was to facilitate the action of slush casting. It allowed there to be a flat bottom when I made the mold, and then ultimately, again, created almost kind of a pour spout, a pour edge within the mold itself. But now I want to be able to trim that off. And so, again, as we were talking about the rhythm and kind of heating tools to do different aspects, different processes, again, the people's instinct would be to take an X-Acto blade, heating it up, but by doing so, as soon as we plunge that X-Acto blade into the surface, it's going to cool down, and we're only really going to get maybe an inch or two of cut. So we can easily, we can go back and forth and keep doing that and working our way around the surface, but you wind up with a fairly chunky cut that will take a little bit more cleanup to make it look a little more fluid, giving us the desired effect. So one way to get around that is that if we're not heating up the tool, the other option is to heat up the wax. And we can simply do this with just tap water. So in a 5-gallon bucket or whatever you have handy, but a basin, in this situation we'll use a 5-gallon bucket, filled up about maybe halfway with just hot tap water. And as we plunge it into the water here, we really only need to wait about 30 seconds, maybe a minute if your wax is on the thicker side. But then as we pull it out here, now the heat has had a chance to saturate into the mass of the wax. And now as we take the X-Acto blade, we can, very controlled, plunge it through the surface and work our way around it, trimming off that edge. And as we work our way around, pretty much almost in one continuous motion, maybe two, we can come around the circumference and then pull this away as one piece. Now the one thing you want to do is after you've worked with the water, you do want to take an air hose or let it dry off naturally, or the most efficiently with an air hose, just blow the water off. If the surface is still wet and we then attack it or approach it with a hot tool, we can vaporize the water, turning it to steam, and that steam will introduce back into the wax, creating other porosity and creating other issues that we'll yet need to fix. So it's always best that's the one wrinkle. For everything we do, that might seem like a little cheat or a hack, is a way to kind of like make things easier. There's usually a price. So that's kind of the price of that little trick, but it's minor because it's easy enough to let your wax dry off or dry it off purposely before moving forward with a different technique. Okay, so now that we have the skirt trimmed off, we want to clean up that edge. And again, depending on the warmth of your room, in this case, my studio is a bit on the warm side today. In combination with being hot-handed, this wax is soft enough that I can just work my way around with my thumb and kind of fold in this edge. Another way I can do it is actually going in and using the heated torch. And as I work around a surface, I want to make it molten. And once I have an area that's kind of slicked down and smooth the way I want it, before moving on to the next thing, I'm going to remove the tool from the wax and I want that area to cool down and re-solidify. If I start rotating the wax pattern prematurely, that molten wax is going to drip and create again another issue that we're going to have to fix, just slowing down our process. Okay, so now to eliminate the seam across the top of the head, we want to be able to, what I like doing is using something with it almost kind of like a flatter surface, a spatula, heating the tool up, and again it needs to be more warm than hot. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of lightly, and what I'm looking to do is just knock off that, out of all your seams, you're always going to have one side that's just a little touch higher. And not always. I mean, if you could, you might get a tight seam, and there might be nothing to chase. But if you can visibly see a seam line, it's typically because one side is just a hint higher or a lot higher than the other side. If it's just a hint higher, this technique works well enough that you can go in, kind of knock out that high point, pushing it off into that other valley and kind of averaging out that transition between the seams. And then once you kind of move that initial wax around, then as the tool is cooling down, you can continue kind of burnishing into the surface until you redefine those planes. Kind of a follow-up to these smoother areas, and after removing the seam lines, is to utilize a piece of 3M pad. Well, 3M's the brand name, but just these like green scrubby pads. You can usually buy them in like 4x6 slabs or 4x8 packages, and there's no other kind of sponge attached to it. It's just the scrubby. So you can go in and continue your burnishing action, polishing action with the pad just being dry, and that could potentially get you where you need to be. If you want to take it even, create even a smoother surface, you can utilize a solvent of some sort. Lighter fluid works really nicely. You can just take just a drop or two onto the surface and then work that in. And what that solvent is doing is it's loosening up the surface of the wax, and again allowing you to kind of actually move the surface of the wax in a real subtle way, knocking off high points, filling in low points, and creating a more polished surface. Another substance that actually works really well is Googan. It's a little bit more viscous and will stay on the surface a little bit longer. So if you have a rougher surface that you're trying to get flat, the Googan allows you to be a little bit more aggressive with the surface. The lighter fluid is a little bit thinner and will allow you to be a little bit more controlled. The other benefit of the lighter fluid is it actually evaporates off the surface relatively quickly. The Googan has a tendency of sitting on the surface a little bit too long, so you need to be careful not to add too much and make the surface of the wax actually mushy, where it's actually picking up more texture, unless you actually want to introduce more textures. So there's always a kind of a balance, between our techniques to give us the desired effects, depending on what the needs are of our specific patterns. So one of the things we'll notice is that, so in this casting, the wax obviously went in a little bit too quickly and captured a series of air bubbles, fairly prominent across the front of the teeth. Now typically, because I'm casting a number of these at a time, I would probably reject this wax and cast it over. But in this situation, it'll be a good opportunity to show how we potentially fix these casting anomalies. Using our heat source of choice, in this case my little trusty propane tank, I'm going to use just a little chunk of sprue wax. I want to load, and if the tip's smoking it's a little too hot, but I'm just going to touch this on the back end of the tool, let some of the wax gather at the tip, and that allows me to deposit the wax as needed into the hole. Ideally I want, the wax is going to shrink so it recessed a little bit, so I'm going to do a second application. And now as this cools, hopefully this will give me something somewhere in line with the surface. If need be, it's totally fine to have a positive that we can then sculpt back into. So a little bit bigger of a drop there. That's fine. So sometimes I'll heat up my tool so it does smoke a little bit, just kind of burn off my excess wax. But then I'll blow on it to cool it off, kind of a better temperature for applying the wax. And a little bit of positive bubble. So utilizing the residual heat in the tool, eliminate that. But again, I'm going to load the back end of the tool, kind of like an ink pen. Let it until it kind of teardrops at the end of the tool. And then I can place that droplet exactly where I want it to go. And you can certainly use the same Victory Brown microcrystalline wax to do this, but I like using the sprue wax so I can remember where I need to, and visibly see where I need to kind of go back in and rechase. And then once those areas solidify, I'll go in. Again, I want to use a cool tool if possible. I can literally kind of just go in and almost kind of burnish the surface. In this case, using the back end of this tool, or almost the heel, kind of the back neck. So very quickly, I was able to go in and clean up, add additional wax into those large negative voids, air bubbles, drop in the wax in a very controlled manner, and then kind of burnish back those droplets to kind of more blend with the surface. And so now we'd continue through and add in maybe these smaller droplets, and or dig out some of these positives. But one of the last things we want to do is do an overall inspection of the wax, and again making sure that the wax is what we want the metal to be. So eliminating, if we want fingerprints, adding fingerprints. If we don't want fingerprints, we could polish things out. But we do want to remember that anything that's in the wax will be in the metal. Now, one of the other anomalies that could be a challenge when fixing the wax is in that along the lines of the negatives. So we have large negatives we can go in with the tool, hot tool, and dab in some molten wax to kind of fill up those larger voids. But there'll be times where you'll have a whole field of tiny little bubbles across the surface of your wax. And yes, you can go in with the hot tool and stuff like that, but it can be super tedious when you're dealing with 100 little bubbles and whatnot. So one material that actually works out really nice for fixing this is referred to as a patching wax. It's another variety of microcrystalline. It's a little bit more viscous than Vaseline, but it allows us to take a small dab, kind of move it around, kind of filling up areas. And then what we can do is, with our finger, kind of massage, working that material into the holes. And because it's such a soft wax, you wind up not deforming the original surface. So there's no kind of re-sculpting to be had. Add a little bit more wax here, kind of working things over the surface, kind of massaging it back. And very quickly, I was able to fill up, 20, 30 holes and still maintaining that surface, or the original surface of the wax. So there you have it. We've now chased our wax. We're ready for the next step, which is to sprue the wax. And spruing will be a combination of incorporating a cup, gates, and vents that will facilitate the removal of the wax from the investment, as well as introducing our metal of choice into the negative void to create our shape. Now, if you found something useful in this video, smash the like button. If you would like to continue seeing aspects of this process with our ultimate goal of transforming this into metal, please subscribe to the channel so you can get notified when I get my the next set of videos up. And I look forward to sharing the rest of this process with you. And until the next video, be creative and be safe.